Daf Chavtes, page 29 of Torah. It's in Parshas Vayeshev, but this mimer is about Chanukah. The mimer begins with a quote from the Gemara in Shabbos. The Gemara says that on the 25th of Kislev, that's when Chanukah starts, and it tells the story and tells us that when the Greeks entered the Heichal, when they entered the Beis Hamikdash, they made everything impure. And then when the Hashmonai kingdom overpowered them, they didn't find oil except for one jar of oil that had the seal of the Kohen Gadol. And then the next year they established Chanukah as a Yomtov, as a holiday, with Hallel and middah, with praising Hashem and thanksgiving. So we need to understand this concept of Hallel, the spiritual meaning of Hallel, of praise, and of middah, thanksgiving. Also, we need to understand why was this miracle specifically chosen that we commemorated each year with lighting the Menorah, to remember what happened in the Beis Hamikdash, that they found one jar of oil. There have been many miracles, both in the Chanukah story and throughout our history. We don't make a commemoration like this for every miracle. What's special, and why does the idea of the Menorah resonate forever? Next question, we need to understand what is the connection between the lighting of the Menorah, lighting of candles, and Hallel and middah. That Chanukah has this theme, both of the Menorah and of praise and thanksgiving. How do they come together? So, in order to understand this, the Maimah quotes the pasuk near mitzvah Torah, that the mitzvah is like a lamp and the Torah is like light. In order to understand what this pasuk means, we first need to understand the spiritual significance and benefit of the Menorah and the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara asks about the Menorah. Was the Beis Hamikdash dark? It just needed some light. Is that what the Menorah is about? So to understand what the Menorah was really about, let's look at some psukim from Sefer Shemos about the keteres, when it's talking about the keteres, the incense that was offered up in the Beis Hamikdash and in the Mishkan. It says that when Aaron would light the Menorah in the afternoon, he would that's when he would burn the keteres, the incense, and then in the morning when he would clear out the Menorah, then he would also burn the incense. Now, in the night, he would actually have all seven candles lit, and then he would have keteres, the incense. In the morning, he would clear out the lamps, and there would only be one of them still lit, which was called the Western lamp. It was called the Western because it was not the Far East; it was the sixth. The sixth lamp was called the Western lamp because it wasn't right on the east. And that one would stay lit. It was the last one that they would put out right before they'd relight it. What's the concept of the Menorah and the seven branches? So the idea is that the Menorah has seven branches because it refers to the seven middos. And every middah, every one of the seven emotional attributes that a person has, we can have the same attribute both in a holy way and in a more mundane way. For example, we can have love for Hashem, for God, or for another person's soul, or we can have love just for a pleasure. That's something that we enjoy. And obviously, there's the more spiritual loves and the greater loves, and then there's the more mundane loves and pleasures. And the same thing with every one of the middos, every one of the emotions, that we can have reverence for Hashem, or we can have a fear which is inappropriate, and it's a paranoia, and similarly with anger, that also comes from the same general side, the spiritual left, like fear. And what we have to do is refine them and transform them to bring them up to holiness. And that's what we mean when we say in Vayivarach Dovid, L'cha Hashem Agdula v'Agvura v'Tiferes v'Netzach v'Hod. We say that to you is and shall be Gedula, greatness, which is Chesed, it's the side of the right, kindness. Then and Gvura, discipline. Tiferes, beauty. Netzach is victory and determination. Hod is humility. And then Kichel, Bashamayim Ba'aretz, Chel refers to Yesod, and then we continue L'cha Shema Mamlacha, Malchus. So Yesod is bonding, and Malchus is bringing it to speech and action, the receiver. And all 7 of these emotional character traits, these midot, which we'll explain more elsewhere, all should be brought up L'cha to Hashem. Now, how do we refine all these middas? How do we refine all these emotional attributes and bring them to Hashem? The refinement happens through Chochmah. Like the Zohar says, "B'Chochmah is barira," that in Chochmah the middat are refined, and that's because Chochmah is intellect, and when the emotions can sometimes go astray, but when they're guided by intellect, then they become more truthful and more wholesome. In addition, within the intellectual attributes, Chochma ben Adas, Chochma is the one which is most related to humility and just letting the soul shine, and therefore it is more of a vessel, something that more than anything else can refine the middat. Now, there's the lighting at night and during the day. At night, it's a time of darkness, so we need to light all 7 of the middat, all 7 emotional attributes, meaning we have to bring the light of Chochmah into each one of the middat in order to keep it on the right path. Whereas in the morning, then it's enough to have just the sixth lamp, because since it's morning, it's a time of revelation. We don't need the light of Chochmah to radiate in all the middah. It's enough if it only radiates in the 6th of the middos, which is Yesod, and Yesod is represents bonding and giving over. That's the most integral middah in terms of what is actually given over. For example, let's say you are in business and you have to make a business pitch. So Chesed will say, full steam ahead. Gevurah will say, oh, this is probably not going to work. I'm just going to make a fool of myself. I'll step back. Tiferet will say, you know what, I'll take the concerns of Gevurah, but still plow ahead with Chesed. Now you've already decided what to do. The first 3 midot are in terms of your feeling and whether you're going to go ahead. Netzach Hod Yesod have the same basic balance, but now we're not talking about your general feeling and what you're going to do. We're talking about how you're going to do it. So Netzach will say, go ahead, do it in a brash way. Hod will say, wait a second, a bit of humility. And then Yesod will take into account the concerns of Hod, but still go on with the feel of Netzach. So Yesod is where we actually give over. That's when we actually we've gone through the whole internal journey, and now we're giving over to the other. And then Malchus is how that expression is received by the other. So therefore, the 6th of the candles is the most important, and even in the time of revelation, even in the time of day, that has to be lit up and refined. Now, the Jewish people began with the 70 descendants of Yaakov, and that 70 corresponds to the 7 lamps. And Yaakov is Yud Akev, like we said in the previous Menorah Vayeshev, that Yaakov takes from Yud, the highest level, which is Chochma in terms of the spheres, and bring that into Akev, into the heel, into the lowest level. Elokis. And that's why when Yaakov was born, his hand was grabbing onto the heel of Esav. The words in the pasuk have Yodai Echezes Bakei Esav. His hand was holding onto the heel of Esav. Now Yodai is the same three letters as Yud. Yud Dalad Vav, and you can flip it around. Yud Vav Dalad is a Yud. His Yud, meaning the highest level, Chochma, was coming down all the way to the heel of Esav and holding on to it, controlling it, in order that the end of Esav, the most physical, mundane part of Esav, cannot be brought into Kelippah, into the side of impurity, but instead will be subjugated to the side of holiness. Now, this is what Aaron accomplished through lighting of the candles. He wanted to, and what he did was he brought down the light of Chochma into the middos, and which basically it elevated all of Yaakov's family, the 70 people of Yaakov's family, because we're putting together the Yud, the light of Chochma, with the more mundane aspects of life. That also our natural emotions should also be used out for holiness. Now, together with lighting the Menorah, there was the burning of keteres, of the incense, that they would first light the Menorah and then burn the keteres. And similarly, in the morning, we have that as well, this link between Menorah and incense in the pasuk. And we see this in the order of the jobs in the Beis HaMikdash, that first they would clear out the two of the lamps before they would burn the keteres in the morning. So we need to understand what is the idea, the spiritual significance of keteres, because we've just explained about the Menorah lighting up each of the 7 middos with the light of Chochmah. So what is the idea of keteres, which happened after the Menorah? So the keteres is also about elevating, but unlike the Menorah is about elevating the emotions, whereas the keteres, the incense, is about elevating the words of one's thought, speech, and action. In other words, that while the Menorah is dealing with the inner part of the personality, the person's middos, his emotions, the keteres, on the other hand, is dealing with their outward expressions, their thought, speech, and action. That they should also be elevated to Hashem. Now, thought, speech, and action is obviously a low level when compared to the Menorah, and therefore the keteres, and like we see, it says in the pasuk in Eicha, it says Chaymas Bastzia, and the walls of the daughter of Zion, and that refers to the words when they're used, they're directed towards holiness, whereas otherwise the words may be directed elsewhere. Now we see this connection between a wall and the stones that used to build a wall with letters, like it says in Sefer Yetzirah that 2 stones can build 2 houses, and then talks about how like, for example, if you have 2 stones, you can either put them 1, 2 or 2, 1. Then when you have 3 stones, then you have a lot more possibilities. You can have 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, 2, 1, 3, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 1, 2. So, and every time you add another stone, you have a lot more possibilities. So now we see this, that the Sefer Yetzirah calls letters stones, because they're the outer expression. They're more external to the personality. And although they're external, but that's where we can really achieve what Hashem wants and really make a difference. Like the pasuk says in Tehillim, and we say it in Shir Shayim, Gadol Havaya Muhlam Eid B'ir Elokeinu, that Hashem is great and very praiseworthy in the city of our God. The Medrash says on this, that when is Hashem great? When he is in Ir Elokeinu, when he's in the city of our God. What does this mean? So in Chassidus it explains that the true greatness of Hashem, of Havaya, which Yud Kei Vav Kei refers to Hashem's name as it is beyond the world, and beyond nature. The true greatness is expressed within nature, in in the city, which is built up of letters, words, which is the external part of the person when it's communicating with others. And that's why in the it says Be'ir Elokeinu, in the city of Elokeinu, Elokim is Hashem within nature. But when is Yud Kei Vav Kei's real greatness expressed? Be'ir Elokeinu, in the city of our God, meaning within nature, when we elevate and refine the natural world to Hashem. Now, the words of our thought, speech, and action that fell under the domination of Kelippah, under the domination of impurity and evil, cannot be refined through Chochmah, through the light of wisdom, because wisdom can only refine emotions, which are still spiritual. But words, which are they're already physical, they're something. Words and items, things, are not something that Chochmah refines. The only way they can be refined too is through the keteres, the incense, because the keteres was made up of spices that don't have any taste. They're not food, so they're effectively inanimate. They're at the lowest rung, because we have they're not something that we can although they do come from plants, most of them, but still they're not something you can eat. They're right at the bottom. And when you burn the incense, so it makes a smell. This smell, it says, will be nechayach, will be accepted in a pleasurable way, in a pleasant way by Hashem. Now, this word nechayach also means it relates to the word descend, that it elicits Hashem's light to descend into this world of nature and limitations. Now, that is in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. But nowadays, we don't have a Beis HaMikdash and we don't have sacrifices, but instead what we have is prayer. Let's consider in prayer, in our davening, how do we have the lighting of the menorah and the keteres and the other parts of the service, the daily service in the Beis HaMikdash, the daily Avodah. So the order was, first there was the Dama Tamid, the blood of the daily sacrifice, and that came before Menorah. Then there was the Menorah, preparing the two of the lamps of the Menorah. Then there was the keteres, the incense. Then they dealt with the limbs of the carbon. So now we have an order: blood, lights, incense, and the limbs of the animal. So what does this mean for us? So now, when we daven, when we say Shema and we daven Shemay Esrei, so the main idea is that we give ourselves totally up. In Shema, we totally dedicate ourselves to Hashem. Now, there are two main central phrases. We have Hashem Echad. We say Hashem is one. There's only Hashem, and that's it. And then we also say B'chol nafshecha, that we love Hashem with all our soul. What does it mean to love Hashem with all our soul? That we're willing to give ourselves up entirely, whether physically or emotionally, spiritually, give ourselves up entirely for Hashem. So what's the difference between saying Hashem is one and that's the only reality and we're totally devoted to that, or saying B'chol nafshecha, that to love Hashem with our whole soul? Why are these two types of giving ourselves over mentioned separately? So the first one, where we say Hashem Echad, that is from the perspective of our godly soul. So our godly soul is totally nullified and is standing right before Hashem, where Hashem is the only existence. Like the pasuk says, Chai Hashem Hashem Marati Lefanav, that it refers to the neshama that I stood before him, I stood before Hashem, that the neshama is in a state of standing, that it's totally nullified before Hashem. Now, in Shema, we say that we should love Hashem with all our heart and all our soul and all our ma'od, to our very self. So, B'chol nafshecha, is with all our soul is that it not only our godly soul should love Hashem and be willing to give itself up for Hashem, but even the animal soul, our desires, that when we normally we might have a desire for whatever physical pleasures, and that should be subdued and then even transformed to have the desire yearning to Hashem. And this second stage, where we're within the physical world, we're not just holy and beyond, but we're physical people. That is the appropriate meditation for Baruch Shem. After Shema, we add in another sentence, Baruch Shem. Here, it's not Hashem is one and that's it. We're saying that even in the world, which appears to be a world of multiplicity, Hashem is one there too. So that Baruch Shem is something that talks more to our animal soul. Shema Yisrael is something that a phrase that talks more. That first verse talks more to our godly soul. It's interesting that this parallels the earlier Maimon Vayeshev about the difference between Yosef, who was totally beyond, and the Shvatim, who were trying to make the world godly within this world. In any case, we know that Mamale, the Hashem's light, the way it's able to be contained within the world, and Sovev, Hashem's light, the way that it is beyond the world, it's either way, it's still Hashem's light. It's not Hashem's essence. And this is what we mean when we say in Baruch Sha'amar that Adei Ad Shemaya Gadol, that Melech Meshavachim Fayadei Ad Shemaya Gadol, that Hashem is the praiseworthy king who it's praiseworthy forever, his great name. Adei Ad, what do we mean Adei Ad forever? Meaning that continuing on and on, all the different stratas and levels in Olam Haba and Gan Eden, Mashiach and Tchias HaMesim, where every stage of history, where also Mashiach is a step forward spiritually, and then Tchias HaMesim with the resurrection of the dead will be another step forward spiritually. So there's so many different levels, and at each level there's a different degree to which we can be conscious and sense godliness. But all of them are still only Hashem's light, not Hashem's essence. And this is true both with angels and with souls. They're all basking at most, even when they're feeling totally spiritually uplifted and they're in higher spiritual worlds, they're basking in the light of Hashem's name, a ray of Hashem, not Hashem himself. And this is like a king, who the king himself is not everywhere. Most people in his kingdom have never met him, but his name is everywhere. So it's not his essence, but it's his name, a ray that comes from him. And similarly, Hashem's light, it enlivens all creations, but it's only his ray, it's not him himself. And therefore, we can say about Hashem that Ani Avai Lo Shenisi, that Hashem doesn't change, because Hashem himself is really totally beyond. And it's only a light from Hashem that is manifest and noticeable, able to be touched in the world. Now, the neshama is the soul is something which is internal in the world. It's from a higher spiritual state than angels, and it's totally one with Hashem. And it thinks and reflects on Hashem's greatness and realizing that it can never really grasp Hashem, and really Hashem is beyond change. But the animal soul, on the other hand, it is separated by an iron curtain between it and Hashem's oneness, because to the animal soul, when it looks around and it sees its shawarma and its beach and whatever gets it going, so they seem very real. It's whatever else, its ego and its hobbies and just any part, not necessarily negative, but all parts of the animal soul, they all seem real and independent, solid existence out of Hashem. But the neshama, it realizes that there's only Hashem. So why did the neshama come down into this place of concealment where we don't realize that truth? We don't at least sense that truth, which the neshama previously had. So it's not for the sake of the neshama, it's for the sake of the animal soul. It's interesting that in the earlier Maimon Vayeshev, we said that it helps the neshama as well. It helps the godly soul as well, because the godly soul has greater passion when it's coming from a distant place. Whereas here he says that the purpose of the person being born and then the soul coming down is not for the soul's sake, it's for the sake of helping the animal soul, to let it shine as well with Hashem's light and be included in Hashem. Now, this is the second level of Baruch Shem. It's not a level of Shema where everything is one and there's only Hashem. It's a level of Baruch Shem where there is apparently other things, but they're really all godliness as well. And the reflection here is coming from a state of being within this world, looking and seeing all other things, and all different other pursuits seem important. And still that yesh, what seems to be real and important, actually should be nullified to Hashem. And this is like the ray of the sun inside the sun, that the ray has no separate existence without the sun, and it's not even noticeable at all inside the sun. Now, when the animal soul is elevated in order to be included in Hashem, so that is greater than what the godly soul can do itself, like we were saying in the previous moment, because the Baal Tshuva has more energy, and that's like the animal soul, that it also has more energy than the godly soul. The animal soul comes from the Merkava, the holy chariot that the prophets spoke of. There was these holy chayos, which were like angels, but in animal form in the Merkava. And it says that in the pasuk talking about the Merkava, it says that v'chayos noises, as I say, that the chayos, which literally means animals, were lifting up the throne. There was this image, which was like the image of a man on top of that throne. So the energy and the passion of the animals and the angels they're like animals in the sense that they have this great passion for Hashem, but on the other hand, it's only instinct. So their energy lifts Adam, which Adam, man, represents something more contained than animals, but on the other hand, something higher than animals. So yes, it's higher, but it's also more contained, and therefore it's missing out on some of that energy. And therefore the angels, which are chayos, they've got this animalistic passion. So they praise Hashem with great noise. And this is what is represented with the dam hatamid, the blood of the daily sacrifice. Over the page, that the pasuk says that it was brought on the north, tzafona lifnei havai, it was brought on the north before Hashem, and that's because the karbanos, the daily sacrifice, was bringing up an animal, and the purpose is to elevate the animal to its source. So the animal is not just a sheep or a cow walking in the field, but it's a reflection and a continuation. It evolves from the animals in the holy chariot. And so now we elevate the animals back to their source in the Pnei Shor, the face of the ox in the Merkava and the holy chariot. Now, the carbon tamid, the daily sacrifice, was one of the Kodshei Kodashim, the extra holy karbanos, and they had stricter rules about them. So they had to be slaughtered specifically in the north part of the yard of the Beit HaMikdash, of the temple, and the north is the left, because when you're facing east, north is your left, and left represents the left side where there's opposition and therefore a lot of noise. And that's also the meaning of tzfeina. It doesn't say tzafei north, but tzfeina with an extra hey at the end in the feminine. But the hey represents the last letter of Hashem's name, which is Malchus, and Malchus is the idea of concealment in order to allow for an other, and because of that, that's why there's a lot of noise. Like an example that we may give is like the difference between the poor person who suddenly, after starving for a long time, is given this fancy 4-course deluxe meal, and the rich person who has that type of meal every day. So the rich person, he eats without any problem, without any noise, without any excitement. That's what he eats every day. Whereas the poor person is so excited, you can see that this is something special for him. Why? Because it doesn't normally happen. So on the other hand, if you take it away, who would be missing out more? Let's say the next day, they don't get this special meal. So although the poor person was seemingly more excited, but the rich person will feel more that they're missing out. Why? Because that's their norm. On the other hand, the passion was more with the one who wasn't their norm. So this is the idea of the passion when you're far away, when it's not your norm. But that passion elevates the throne. It's something that Adam doesn't have, that the man doesn't have, which represents the difference. But this is the difference between Tayu and Tikkun. We spoke about in the previous Maimer about about the bundles, that Tayu, the light of Tayu, is more passionate. That's why it wasn't able to be contained. But on the other hand, it's more passionate. And Tikkun, the rectified world, the rectified space is it's rectified, but on the other hand, it's more calm, and that's represented by Adam, person, not animal, and it's the name Hashem Havaya Yud Kei Vav Kei is also an organized system. That the Yud is Chochma, and Hey is Binah, Vav is the 6 middos, and then the second Hey is Malchus. So it's an organized system of energies, whereas the angels have this great noise. They're calling out with screaming out. And that is the idea of Lifnei Havaya, before Hashem, meaning beyond Hashem, in the sense that Havaya represents systematic, very powerful lights, but systematic, whereas the left, because it's far away, it needs more, it has greater yearning. And that's the idea of the blood, which blood is that heat, and blood represents where it comes from Gvura, where there's a negativity, but that creates more passion for Hashem coming from the animal. And that we have to try to reach the same state when we're davening, with a lot of passion and yearning and thirst for Hashem. This is what we mean. We say in Tzidkascha and Shabbos Mincha, Adam of Behema, right? And similar pasuk, we have Adam of Behema Teshia Hashem Havaya, that both Adam, man, which is the organized, more systematic level of the tzaddik, where things are in the right place, and Behema, animal, that has more passion. That the behema, the animal part of the person, it saves, meaning it reaches, it brings us to a higher level, that Hashem, and there should be a flow of godly energy also into the animal, because it's giving us this state of yearning. And that is the idea of b'chol levavcha. We say we should love Hashem with all our heart. It says levavcha with 2 times base, and it represents that with both our godly soul and our animal soul, because our animal soul adds something to the love of Hashem we're able to have because of that yearning. Now, in the heart, there's 2 parts. There's the right and the left. The blood, most of the blood is in the left part of the heart. The left part of the heart is the bigger part of the heart, and that's where the most important blood is. And then it's in a state of heat there. And to the extent that that's why we have one of the functions that the lungs help for the heart is that they cool down the heart. And that's spiritually, that's the idea that the heart is this great yearning and desire for and thirst for Hashem. Next paragraph. So now our yearning and elevation towards Hashem elicits a similar response from Hashem, like the famous pasuk upon him, that like the face reflecting on water, that's the same thing, way that Hashem will reflect back to us, just as the person nullifies his ego towards the nothing of Hashem, the unknowable Hashem. So too above, Hashem brings down his ayin, his nothing, his unknowable, towards our towards our place where we are an existence, we are someone and something independent. That Hashem should be able to rest in our world, just like he is manifest above, he should also be manifest in our world. That is b'chol, through our passion in b'chol vavcha. Then we've got b'chol nafshecha, that with all our soul, meaning even with our external expression, our thought, speech, and action. It's not our personality, it's not our depth, it's just what we happen to be thinking, speaking, or doing. And that they should also they should also be totally devoted to Hashem. The main part of the nefesh, the soul, when we say b'chol nafshecha, with all your soul, the main part of it is the way we think. And different people have different style of learning and thinking. Now, this is the idea of lighting the menorah, that everyone has a different style, and all 7 branches, all 7 types of personality are lit up and are elevated towards Hashem. But during the evening and the afternoon, they would light all 7, like we said before, whereas in the morning was only 1. This is the idea of we at the beginning of the Maimon mentioned the pasuk ner mitzvah Torah, that the mitzvah is a lamp and Torah is the light. So the idea of Torah is that the light of Torah should shine throughout our thinking, throughout our intellect and our intellectual perspective, and then and that's all part of b'chol nafshecha, with all our soul, that it's all guided by holy thinking. And then we have b'chol middah, with all our might, which means that we're also part of all our might, like the Gemara says, is that we're willing to give up all our possessions and all our money. And this refers to tzedakah, which is the sort of generic mitzvah, because mitzvahs are all about impact. They're all about physical acts that impact on the physical world. And like we said before, that's the idea of the keteras, the incense, which are things that can't even be eaten. So they're in a way, very mundane. And then from them, we make a smell, a nice smell, for which the idea of smell is a very sort of refined sense. And that it has a big impact on the person. Like we see, it strengthens when a person smells something nice, it improves their thinking, and it can even wake someone up when they're feeling faint. Now, the beginning of the expression of the soul is in the mind, but sometimes the mind may feel faint, and then when he smells something, so then he feels better, and then he's able to express himself. And similar happens with mitzvahs, and especially tzedakah, that it says about tzedakah in a pasuk, tzedakah teromim goy, that tzedakah lifts a nation, that tzedakah lifts us and above Hashem. And like the pasuk says, by Yil bash tzedakah shiroyan, that Hashem will wear tzedakah like the armor, and a hat of salvation on his head. Now, what does this pasuk mean? It mentions tzedakah as like an armor, and then talks about this hat of Yeshua, of salvation, on the head. So that the idea of armor, this is like it explains in Tanya, in the 3rd Igeris of Igeris HaKodesh, about how that tzedakah protects, is like a spiritual armor that protects a person from Kelippah being able to latch on. And then we find a similar pasuk in Mishlei. It says Ateres Tiferes Seva B'derech Tzedakah Timotze, and now which means the crown of beauty of the old is found through the path of tzedakah. Now, this idea, the crown of the old, it's the crown of the beauty of the old. It's similar to another pasuk we have, Hadarta Pnei Zaken, that you should honor, you should glorify the old. And there we use the word pnei, the face of. So there's this idea of the face represents the internal of the person. Now, the idea is that what we're seeking is a pneumistic relationship with Hashem, an internal relationship with Hashem, and inside us we have our more external part of our heart and more internal part of our heart. And the internal part of the heart, which is more spiritually sensitive, is more guided by the mind. Like the Zohar says, train rein the Lemis Parashin, that Chochma and Binah are two friends that don't separate, and Binah links in more with the heart, whereas Chochma is fully in the mind. On the other hand, the external part of the heart doesn't relate so well to the mind. That a person might have control of his mind, but not necessarily of his desires and urgings. Whereas the internal part of the heart, the inner part of the heart, is more guided by the mind. Now, tzedakah is like this sense of reyach. It's connected to keteres. Both of them are related to lifting action to a higher spiritual level. And so like the sense which can reveal the inner perspective of the mind, and that guides and unites with the inner part of the heart. And the heart is unique, that it is the limb which energizes the entire body, and that's linked to Hashem, which it says about Hashem, Ba'ata Mechayes Kulam, that you, Hashem, enliven everything. And therefore the heart, and in particular the inner part of the heart, which reflects the inner light of Hashem, it is accessed through tzedakah. Like we said before, that this Ateres Tiferes Seva, the crown of the beauty of the old, is reached through the way of tzedakah, of charity, of tzedakah, that what we're doing is foregoing our own ego to give what we worked hard for to someone else. And then so our yesh is being brought to ayin. And in place of that, Hashem's ayin, Hashem's nothingness, this unknown beyond, is brought down, it flows down into our yesh. And this is the idea that it says that when we're doing well, when we're doing the right thing, we are oisin ratzonei shel makom, we are doing Hashem's will. But it also means oisin ratzonei shel makom, we're making Hashem's will, because will can change, whereas Hashem himself doesn't change. So the idea of making Hashem's will is that when we do a mitzvah, we bring Hashem's light, Hashem's energy into the physical world, and therefore all the mitzvahs can be compared to this link system, this pillar which links above and below, and allows Hashem's light to be manifest within the world. And in particular, that's that happens through tzedakah. Now, we mentioned before, there's a pasuk that says that tzedakah is like a armor, and like this kova Yeshua, this hat of Yeshua, of salvation. So let's look more at those words. So this idea that tzedakah is like this hat, this helmet of salvation, is because Yeshua also means, besides salvation, it means to turn. So like it says that Hashem turned to Hevel. And the idea is that tzedakah makes Hashem turn towards us and listen to our tefillah, listen to our prayer. And this is also connected to the idea of hadras panim. We said that the pasuk said the beauty of the crown of beauty of the aged is of the older people, which links to the idea of hadras panim of the hadras panim literally is like vadarta pnei zaken, to honor the old, but it says the pnei, the face of the old, meaning the pnimius, and that is achieved through tzedakah. We're able to elicit from Hashem's pnimius, Hashem's inner, to connect to our inner. This is all what happens through keteris. It's dealing with things which seemingly are useless. They're not food. They're nothing. But then we can use them to create this sense, which is a very spiritual, lofty thing. And similar to tzedakah, it's dealing with physical things, money and the like. And same with all mitzvahs, deal with physical things. But from that, we can elicit this deep connection and bonding with Hashem. Then the next step in the karbanos, after we've dealt with we've offered the blood and the light of the menorah and the keteris, then the next step is the limbs of the animals. Now, the limbs of the animals have two parts. They have the meat, but they have the fat also. And the idea of fat is pleasure. Like we see that it's interesting comments, but that pleasure is connected with fat. That one Mashpia said that rounder people may have a heightened sense of ability to and sort of they notice they have this strong sense of tainug, and this is done right when our pleasure is completely to Hashem. What excites us, what really moves us, is Hashem, and when that is how the state we're in, then we can continue to the next sentence of Shema, which is that we already spoke about the first pasuk Shema, which is Hashem is one, and that's it, and that's the state that the neshama is in. Then Baruch Shem, the body doesn't feel that oneness, but nevertheless accepts it, that the real thing is only Hashem. And then we should love Hashem. We said b'chol levavcha, v'chol nafshecha, v'chol meidecha. We discussed all three here in this mimer. Right, the b'chol levavcha is both souls, and the greater power that comes from the yearning of because we're involved in the physical world. And then b'chol nafshecha is the mesiras nefesh that includes the Nefesh Habehamis. Then b'chol meidecha, our money and our external, using that for Hashem, physical mitzvahs, which that elicits the keteris, the sense of smell, which is something very deep and a deep relationship with Hashem. And then we move on to the final, the following pasuk, that these words that I command you, we should always be focused on them. Meaning that we should have a pleasure and sense the sweetness of Torah. So in short, what we've gone through is how the daily offerings and schedule of the Beis HaMikdash includes, first of all, the dam, the passion that it should be to Hashem, then the light of the menorah, which is that our emotions should be guided by Chochmah, the light of Chochmah, the intellectual perspective, but from a godly intellectual perspective. In other words, thinking of things, viewing things from Hashem's perspective, and that guides our emotions. And then we went on to the keteris, which is not only that our inner emotions should be aligned with Hashem, but our thought, speech, and action, which is our more external expression. And then finally, the avarim, the limbs, are offered up on the mizbeach, and that represents our sense of pleasure. We should just be excited with our neshama pleasures with Hashem. And therefore, what are we talking about? These words will be on our heart, that what we'll be focused on is ruchnius and Hashem.